Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why at each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we are back. I am excited to be back because I am back with a returning guest, which is awesome. I love having returning guests. We've got Rachel Grover back with us, and she was here. It seems like it was forever, but it was really only September, which you got to go back. Episode 54, she shared some awesome stuff. I was actually going back and just re-listening to this episode recently, and it's so good. How to get conversational English skills with your ELLs in the Makerspace, which I love. So great. And while we were having that conversation, Rachel was dropping all these awesome thoughts and ideas. I was like, well, we've got to come back. And so we are coming back. And so without further ado, please, Rachel, remind folks who you are, where you're at, and what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me back. I am a middle school librarian in Virginia, and I've been a librarian for 12 years. And prior to that, I was a classroom teacher. I taught 5th grade for 2 years, and then I taught middle school, 7th grade and 8th grade English for 5 as well. So I did 5 in the classroom, and I have done 12 in the library, and it is amazing. And also it feels like college was forever ago. So yes. it feels like it's flown, and also I have done my time. So
Yep.
I am a national board certified librarian. I was 2023 Virginia School Librarian of the Year. I serve on several committees at my school. I am an adjunct professor. I do supervising for Old Dominion University's school library program. So what else? I write for Knowledge Quest. I also write for a couple of other things. I've also appeared on Amy Herman's School Librarians United. So if you Google my name, I always tell kids, if you Google my name, you will find a couple pages, and they are almost all legit.
That's awesome. Almost all legit. I like that.
Well, apparently there is a Rachel Grover who is a professor at Loyola University, and I am indeed not her. I do not yet have my doctorate.
Okay. Not yet, but we're going to...
Not yet. It's on the to-do.
All right. I love it. So last time we spoke, you were sharing this awesome lesson, and it's sort of in the course of it and kind of talking about different stuff. You mentioned this idea of having students license their artwork, and I think that is so brilliant. Like, I wanted to just stop where we were last time and just chase that down. But today we are going to chase that down because this is such an amazing idea. And like, as soon as you said it, I was like, of course we should be doing this. And why have I not thought of this before? So I'm kind of curious, like, what was the genesis of this? Like, where did this come from?
So I am really good at working with everybody in my school. I work with everybody. The one that's been a little tricky has been PE. But for the most part, I have worked with everyone. I just got an email today from Spanish that she wants to stop by for an idea tomorrow. I have a couple of emails into a couple of people to do some collaborations coming up the end of the year. So I really try to work with every single person because they deserve our library services in every content area.
Absolutely.
And so one of the things that I really specialize in is art. I do a lot of work with our art classes, and something I love about our art is that we have one art teacher, but she unfortunately has like 5 preps. Like every single one is a different class. So she's always looking for any help she can get. And one of her classes is computers and art. And so they're looking at digital things. They do Photoshop. They do all kinds of things. Well, one of the things that we did a couple of years ago was she was talking about how she was so tired of kids pulling pictures off of Google to use for a collage that they were doing. And she was like, I know that there are free pictures online. And I was like, yeah, there are. And I could do a lesson on how to find those and, whatever. And she was like, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So it started there.
Okay.
And in my process of doing all of that research, it was the pandemic. And all of us were home, and it was back when Twitter was alive and well. And there was I was very into following a lot of library related people, including vendors and companies and librarians like you. That's how we met.
Mhm.
And one of the companies that I follow, I was just scrolling one day and I saw this thing that it said, is something like my weekend is all booked. But I have this weird thing, Steve. It's called the photographic memory. And I
Mm.
remember everything I see. It is a blessing and a curse. And I was scrolling and I was like, that looks really familiar because the image that they posted was one of those pins, like the enamel pins that you put
Yeah.
like on your lanyard or whatever.
Mhm.
And I was like, I've seen that before. So I did a reverse image search and sure enough, it went to an artist's Etsy page.
Hmm.
And the Etsy page, it was for sale. It was like $12, this super cute little enamel pin. But this really well respected company, Steve, didn't give any credit for it. Like, not at all. So I had to respond and say, credit where credit is due. And I tagged the creator who was on Twitter at the time and provided the link and did my due diligence because I
Mhm.
couldn't take that money out of that artist's pocket.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this really kind of moved into, they just took this picture off of this person's Etsy page. Oh my God. Like all they had to do, because they had thousands of followers, all they had to do was add the link
Mhm.
and it would have made that person so much money.
Yeah.
And so
And not just that, but also the fact that like they are sort of misrepresenting where that art is coming from by not giving the credit. So like
yeah,
there's multiple layers to what they're doing there. And it's funny because, you talk about photographic memory and reverse image search and stuff like it's you're saying this about a piece of art. And if it was text, it's easy to search text. Like it's easy to track that down. But sometimes with images, like it can be tough to know, like, wait, have I seen that before? Like sometimes the provenance can be really difficult to kind of track down. So I love that you were able to recognize and not only recognize, but track down and find where that came from. So kudos to you on that.
well, it helped that I was working on this art thing and we had done the lesson prior to COVID, but it was fine. It was about how to find free images online and it wasn't a big deal. But
Hmm.
I purposely wanted to include this art into this lesson because I wanted to have the start of the conversation of how would you feel if you were that artist? You are
Hmm.
selling this, you have a small business, maybe you're working a full-time job and you're really hoping this is going to take off. And what a missed opportunity. How would you feel as an artist?
Yeah.
And so we have this whole conversation about emotion and in intellectual property. It's a nice way to get artists to think about intellectual property and what really is theirs. So we have this whole conversation. And then we talk about, well, she could have done a lot of things with this art, but we talk a little bit about how to license your art. Now, I want to be very clear that I'm not talking about like you tell a company, here, use my art and I'm going to get paid for it. That's
Hmm.
not what we're talking about. What
Right.
we're talking about is kids feeling like they have the power to control how others use their art. Um, and
Absolutely.
so and
And
so
they
with
should.
that, oh, I
Yeah.
completely agree. And this is something that for our artists in 7th and 8th grade, these are things that our 12 and 13-year-old kids are not thinking about.
Hmm.
So we have this whole conversation about what does it mean to give rights to your artwork because we talk about public domain. We talk about, the website like Flickr. People just post things on there and they don't really want attribution. They just do it. And then there's other people that keep it under copyright and you can't use it for anything.
Hmm. And
So what
even
do you
just
think so
using
far? I've talked a lot.
yeah, no, but I mean, even just the filters of when you're doing searches, like even a Google search, one of the tools is you can select what kind of licensing I like to use Flickr when I'm looking for, different kinds of stuff. And again, they've got the drop down menu for like, do you want all copyright? Do you want just Creative Commons? Like what are you looking for? And I don't think most people recognize that like that, A, that is an option, and B, that is something they should really be thinking about when they use images. And going back to years ago, I mean, not years and years, but like before I even got in the library, that was a conversation I would have with students when they were working on projects. Like, doesn't matter if it's words or pictures or video or audio. If you took it from someplace else, you need to give credit. And they would look at me like I had four heads. I'm like, you didn't make it. You have to say where it came from. So I think this is awesome that you're having these conversations with the students.
Well, and it actually starts with, we talk about copyright. And here in the United States, I tell kids, even if you doodle on the side of a worksheet, it is yours and it belongs to you. And
Mm-hmm.
people can't use it without your permission.
Uh-huh.
And it blows their minds that we talk about inherent copyright, especially as artists. And if you want to give permission, you can. But if there is no permission seen, you need to assume it is not allowed to be able to be used.
Uh-huh.
And that blows their minds. So I do give time for them to kind of process at the table, what they're thinking about, these emotions that, is this just a fun hobby for you and you just want to give it away on Flickr? Or is this something that like you really want to do? There's such a market for artists that are so
Oh,
talented.
absolutely. Yeah. So I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but I'm so
That's
curious.
okay.
Have you talked at all about AI and AI use of art and whatnot within this?
Yes. So the intro that we did, so it's a semester class.
Okay.
So the intro that we did this past semester was, can you tell if the art is AI or not? And it's
Interesting.
really interesting to see if the kids can tell. So I do like 5 pictures of sunsets, and 2 of them are AI and 3 of them are not. 2 of them are AI, 2 of them are copyright, and 1 of them is public domain.
Okay.
But I like using that as a point that sometimes you can't tell, and what AI is doing to the artist industry.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
it is the small conversation talking about copyright and how many artists are so upset that, that so many AI models have been trained on their style. You could say in a cartoon style or a Pixar style or whatever, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
fed all of this information. How would you
Mm-hmm.
feel if that was you?
Yeah.
And so we really try to make
Especially
it real world.
Yeah. And especially with those kinds of art styles that are very distinct and that are very recognizable. I see it all the time online where people are like, oh, here's me as a whatever kind of character. And it's like, yeah, but did you really think about what that means and what you're doing there? And I have to admit, I was doing it at first when AI was first kind of rolling out because it was like,
Me
oh, this
too.
is kind of neat. This is cool. And then somebody pointed it out to me. And now it's like, well, of course, like, why did I not think of this in the first place? So I love that folks are kind of making us aware, helping us understand like there is an ecosystem here that AI might be pulling from that is maybe not necessarily something we should be dipping our toes into. So I love that you're having that conversation with the kids because so incredibly important. And there's so much, I don't want to go down an AI rabbit hole because I literally could spend the next 5 days talking about the problems with AI, but we're not going to go there. Instead, we're going to come back. I'm going to rein myself in. I'm going to apologize to the audience and I'm going to say we are talking about licensing art. So I love that you're having these conversations. And so now that you sort of introduce these ideas, sort of where do you go from there?
So then one of the things that middle schoolers absolutely love is freedom. They love
Mm.
being given choice to be able to make their own decisions. And so that is how I introduce the concept of Creative Commons to them. They get to
Ah.
make the choice. What do they want their art to have permissions for? And they can change the permissions based on the kind of art. Just because you narrow it to whatever it is, that doesn't mean that has to be for every single thing you create.
Mm-hmm.
And in what situations would you want there to be derivatives? In what situations would you want them to be, they have to share exact, but they have to give you credit?
Mm-hmm.
So we have these conversations about, what are the situations that you would want your artwork manipulated? And so it's a really kind of overall introduction into Creative Commons, but it really, it fits in very nicely to the idea of student empowerment and them being able to make choices in places that, middle schoolers don't have as many places for freedom as say high schoolers do. But
Mm-hmm.
especially when you think about art, some kids feel very intimidated by make something. And some kids feel like if you say draw a dragon, it's too much, And so to give them something else to think about, put your art into the world, but you can put rules on it and it blows their minds.
I love that. I love that. And I only learned about Creative Commons when I was doing my library degree. So like it was
it's recent.
Brand new to me. Yeah. And it's really interesting. It's fascinating how it's set up. And I'm sure we can talk through some of the details of it a little later, but like the idea that you can say you can use this, but don't monetize it, that anybody would put anything out in the world these days without saying, sure, you can use it, but don't monetize it because I put it out for free. I don't want you making money off of my ideas. That like, I try to always remember to put that on anything I'm going to share out because it's like, teachers pay teachers or whatever. Like there's people who are unscrupulous and just making money off of your blood, sweat, and tears. So
That's
love
exactly
that you're having
right.
this conversation with the kids.
So then we have the last 20 minutes of the period. Usually it's like a 45 to 60-minute lesson. Depends on how much time the teacher gives me and how chatty the kids are. I really try to focus on them being able to discuss and really process it with their peers. But we do give them time at the end to explore how to narrow by Creative Commons, how to play with the Creative Commons website, which is linked in the show notes, how to, take the image when Creative Commons creates the little image for you and how to add that to your art design. So we do give them probably half the period or so to really apply a lot of these concepts. So there's a lot of chat at the beginning when we're talking about these overall ideas. And then the second half is really quiet, believe it or not, because they're really in tune with playing around with these new things that I have now suddenly blown their mind, apparently.
Right. Well, and there are so many considerations to think about when you're going to choose Creative Commons licenses. And that's one of the things I like is that they're very mix and matchable and that they are very flexible in what you can do with them. For those folks who have not heard of Creative Commons, absolutely should go check out creativecommons.org. They've got an entire website that sort of explains the philosophy and where it came from and how it all works. But they also have this really awesome page that lets you kind of select, here are the things that I want. And when you hit submit, it will spit out a little tag for you to be able to use with your work.
And that is the thing that the kids love because you get to ask all these different questions and it makes it for you. And they're like, whoa.
It's really neat. It's really cool. And I don't use the chooser as much. I should use the chooser because it's probably a lot easier, but I tend to just go to the here's the explanation of what they all mean and just choose the one that I like and slap my name near it. So,
but yes, agreed.
So do you go through when do you take the students to Creative Commons website and sort of walk them through, here's what each little strand means or why you might want to think about using it?
Yeah, we do show and tell for sure.
Okay.
So I walk them through and, we talk about public domain versus copyright versus Creative Commons and in what situation you would want for which one and what all the little pieces mean. Trying to put some of those into middle school language is a little tricky.
Yeah.
But it is, kids will hang on to your every word, because the kids in the computers and art class have now gone through the introductory class. It's one of those, it has that prerequisite. You can't just start fresh in this class. And so these are the kids that are dedicated that want to do this. And during this lesson, there is no conversation while I'm talking. They're right listening to every word I say.
That's awesome. I imagine that they're all bookmarking Creative Commons so they can come right back to it.
Yeah. And I make sure that all of the links and even the presentation go onto our art teachers' library management. We do have Schoology.
Okay.
So that they can come back to it for the semester. So it tends to be a lesson that's in the first 2 to 4 weeks of the semester so that it's kind of that one of those intros to kind of set the stage for can just borrow things off Google for this class.
Yeah. Well, and not only is it useful for the art class, but that conversation, I imagine, just is so wonderfully cross-disciplinary to be able to talk about when we cite stuff in English class. It's the same sort of idea. We're giving credit to the person who created it, just like you want credit for your artwork. So I would imagine there's probably some really interesting conversations across class like the different disciplines as you're going through this.
Yeah, and the thing that that I always find most valuable in the whole lesson, Steve, is that I always make maybe the last 5 to 7 minutes. I give them an index card, and I tell them they can write their name at the top or not. It's up to them. And I ask them 3 questions. First of all, rate this lesson from 1 to 5, 5 being stellar and 1 being a waste of my time. And I say that because the kids appreciate the humanity.
Mhm.
The second thing that they have to write is the most meaningful part of the lesson, which is really interesting to see what it is that the kids are still, they've really thought about.
Mhm.
And the last one is either a question they have or what are they still thinking about? What is it that they're walking out of this library still thinking about, like that one little part that just there's maybe they want to know more about, or, is something that really, really impacted them.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, semester to semester, it is really interesting to see what are the things that kids think about. A lot of times they're thinking about that Etsy owner that missed out on the money.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're thinking about, oh, they want to license everything that they have made.
Mhm.
And then other times they are still thinking about AI and what does AI mean for art. And it's really impactful to be able to hear from kids, what are they still thinking about? It is a really powerful question to ask kids
Yeah.
because it's something that that it has stuck with them.
Yeah, seriously. And I imagine too, not only are you finding out what's sticking with them, but I would be surprised to learn that you didn't find some of those comments and questions as sort of hooks for future conversations or discussions too.
That's exactly right. There's been questions, and obviously I can't think of one now because we're recording. But there have been times that there's been questions, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's a really great thing," and I'll add it to our AI conversation. Like they're asking a genuine, they don't know question, and I'm like,
Mhm.
maybe I'll add that to my slides for the next one.
Yeah, love that. So before I have a couple of questions, but before I get to them,
Sure.
I want to just, for the folks who aren't super familiar with Creative Commons, I'm just going to real quick hit like what their main areas
Oh,
are. And
please
if
do.
you've got thoughts or comments that you want to throw in, please do.
Sure.
But they start with something real basic, which is just a byline, which is basically like you got to give credit. And
Hmm.
then they've got share alike, which is if you share it, then if somebody else wants to also share it, they've got to share it with at least the same level of permissions that you get. Love
Correct.
that too. We got NC for non-commercial. So in other words, people can't make money off of your work. That's the one that I think everybody should be thinking about, at least, if not actively using.
Right.
What am I missing here? Buy CC. Oh, no derivatives. So you can say you can't make changes to this. You can use it as it is, but no remixes.
And
And I,
that's the one that kids like to have that conversation about because they were like, but this is good as it is. Why would anybody mix it? Or how could they mix it? It's a digital file. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you have learned Photoshop by now. You know how to mix a file.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. I mean, I'm imagining the conversations in my head that I would be having with my middle grade students about this. And it's just really, I'm sure it's fascinating to hear what they're saying and to have those conversations in class.
But I also think, Steve, that, I think it's a worthy conversation for your AP photography class, for your AP
Oh,
drawing
yeah.
class, your seniors that are maybe applying to art school. I would love to know the difference in conversation between my 7th and 8th graders and seniors.
Hmm. Well, and I would even argue you could bring this down levels too, because
Yes.
although the concepts you might need to think about how you word them, the basics of it, I think, still apply to all of our students at pretty much all age levels. Like we really do want them. We've been pushing this idea of students should be creators and not just consumers, but we need to include with that at all grade levels. If you are creating, then you deserve credit for your work, and making sure that that just becomes part of the philosophy. Because in my mind, if they're growing up with the idea that if I make it, I deserve credit, then
Hmm.
that's going to make it so much easier when you talk about, so then if you use somebody else's work, you need to give credit, like,
That's
and
right.
it's
You are
just
now the audience.
exactly like it's just part of the accepted understanding of how we use media. And that would
That's
be,
right.
to my mind, the ideal. Like that's where we should be.
Mhm.
I think there's the only other one I think I didn't get was the public domain. So you can do CC0, anyone, anywhere can use it for any purpose, whatever they want. So those are mixable and matchable, well, except for public domain. That's pretty much your public domain or you're not. But the other ones are kind of mixable and matchable. They've got little icons that you can copy paste, or if you use the creator, kind of spits one out for you. And they're great. They're small. They're easy to throw into an image, or I put them in my slide decks. I usually put them on like the master slide somewhere so that it can't be tampered off of there.
Yeah.
But they're simple to use, but it's such a great tool that is so easy to overlook. And I'm so glad you're having these conversations with the middle schoolers. It's so great.
And I think it's a worthy collaboration for librarians. You know, one of the things, a hot take of mine, Steve, so many librarians really champion working with their English teachers. And I love that. I love that for them. English teachers are overworked and underpaid. And I say that because I was one. And also, every other department deserves your attention as well.
Yep.
And this is a library skill that may not be as well received with your English class. And maybe you haven't made a step into art. You know, you could have this conversation in any kind of art class. It doesn't have to be a computers and art class. And so maybe this is an opportunity for you to reach out to someone in your building that maybe you haven't worked with before.
Absolutely. No, I'm 100% on board with that. And theoretically, you could have this conversation. It doesn't have to be art. You could have a conversation like this in English about when the kids make work. If they're going to post it online, they should be thinking about, am I getting credit or not? But I absolutely 100% agree that, yes, we should also be talking about this in art and social studies and science. Like wherever they're going to be making something, make sure that they understand they have some sort of ownership over their intellectual property. It's just, that's the way it is. So if we're not telling them that, we're kind of doing them a disservice.
And middle school is the time where kids are, they're practicing being grown.
Yes.
And it's so cute because they can't lie and they can't cheat. And it's amazing because they're bad at a lot of things. And it makes me laugh all the time. But they're learning how to be adults. And I think it's a mind-blowing kind of thing when you tell them, you know, you own what you make. You know, because middle schoolers, you know, they have very limited freedom. And the fact that they're owning something, you know, aside from, you know, their phone or their jeans or whatever it is, they're owning their artwork. And that is such a higher level thought that middle schoolers haven't encountered before.
Yeah. I mean, the ownership, the way that gives them power and gives them voice, something that middle school kids can never get enough of. And deservedly, like they need to start, like you said, they're kind of practicing adulthood. And this is a great way to practice some of those adulthood ideas and thought processes and skills.
That's right.
Love it. You're working with these students in art class. So I don't know if this is something that is relevant or not, but is there any sort of differentiation or ways that you sort of modify for either students of different ability levels or for ELL students or anything like that?
You know, it's a really great question. And the answer is absolutely not. This is a lesson that has evolved over the years. And that is not something I have touched with this lesson. I think there's a lot of opportunities. But I have not explored that quite yet. I tend to find that the students that are in our art classes are very mixed. It is, and I didn't say this, I'm in Northern Virginia, and the school that I'm at is not fully gifted and talented, but we are a gifted and talented magnet school, like center almost. And so the class that most of our art classes are a mix between regular kids and gifted kids and kids with IEPs and kids who are learning English for the first time. And it's really interesting because it is really like We're the World. It is every kid in every level. And I find that this particular lesson, if you make it real world, for the most part, you have every kid's attention. I have found that it is difficult when you try to do this with students who have very limited English, but they're very good about following along in the process. You know, they're very visual. So even when it comes to the exploring part, they can still do that pretty well. They might have their Google Translate up to, you know, for search things. But for the most part, they can follow along, but I have not yet done any kind of differentiation. I would love some suggestions.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to figure it out myself as we're talking it through. And it's certainly some of the concepts, like you said, you kind of have to reword maybe for the middle school audience. And so how do you then further reword that in a way to make it even more accessible? But on the other hand, some of the Creative Commons icons, I think, sort of in a way, like the icons themselves sort of speak a little bit to what they stand for. And so if you've got that visual language, that might help get some of it across too.
Yeah,
But
especially since it's like there's like the dollar sign, and there's a couple of others that are they seem very easy to understand.
and I guess because it is, if you're using it with visuals, like visual art, you might be able to represent it as visual art, like create some of your own art to represent what the different elements are. So,
Yeah.
that's definitely a little bit of a head scratcher, but definitely I appreciate that you're kind of giving that some consideration. The other question I had was, so you've been doing this for a couple of years now, right?
It's been several. I have I've actually gone through 2 art teachers on this. The first one retired, and then the second one, you have to repitch all of your ideas to whoever is new.
Mm-hmm.
And the art teacher was like, "Oh my god, please and thank you."
That's awesome.
So we kind of modified it even more, but she loved it as it was. She was like, "Yeah,
Okay.
this is exactly what they need."
Awesome. So that's very good feedback to get from the person in charge. I'm kind of curious. Have you heard, I mean, you've had conversations with the students about this in the sort of aftermath of the lesson. Have you heard anything or seen the students, utilizing this in a particular way that you were like, oh yeah, this clearly stuck?
Yeah, they actually have an assignment where they have to add Creative Commons to their art.
Awesome.
So it's really fun because they are printed and you can see them. So it's nice that it sticks.
Yeah, that's great. And just because I'm curious, have you seen any sort of crossover between the conversations you're having in art and conversations in other places about IP and whatnot?
No, it's actually very isolated.
Ah, interesting.
Well, and right now it's very difficult to be a teacher, and I would not be in the classroom right now. Hats off to every teacher, and been there, done that, done my time. You deserve more than what you're paid. But our content areas right now are largely scripted. Our
Gotcha.
district is very much scripting a lot of different things, and so they're getting a lot of county and district support, but they're not using us as much, and so it's a little bit of a challenge to try to break in and do new things. So a lot of times I try to go for the elective classes because they are, a little bit more flexible.
Gotcha. I wonder, just again, spitball off the top of my head,
Please.
but I wonder if you could sort of bridge the gap in any way. And if they're scripted, it may not work super well. But like if you went to, I always default to ELA because 20 something years in the ELA classroom. One of the things we used to have to do as part of our state testing was the students were given a picture and they had to write different kinds of creative pieces based on the picture,
Oh,
poetry or
interesting.
short story or something like that. And I wonder if that might be an in for like some sort of creative writing to say like, hey, we were
Mm.
talking about art and we talked about this image stuff and like maybe we can build something out of the art, build some different kinds of literature out of the art and then talk about how, yeah, that was somebody created that and you created this and let's make sure that we're taking credit for our own work. And I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
just blue
definitely.
sky in here.
Well, but that's what, and that's what I love about Librarian, Steve, is that, one of us can have an idea and someone else is like, I'm going to take and do it this way. Or, it would be really great if you added such and such. There's such power in community.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again right now, but I could have a conversation with you about a lesson you do, and I could have a conversation with the librarian down the street who's doing the same lesson, and it's still going to be different because every one of us brings our own taste, talent, skill, ability. We adapt it to our students. It's going to be different, and we can learn from all those little tweaks as we go along. So, I mean, I'm with you. I love having the community. I love having the conversations, always learning something new.
That's
So,
exactly right.
yeah. So I think then we are at the point where we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Squiddy.
Hooray!
Hooray for the book break. So any kind of book you want to bring, something you want people to have on their radar. What are you thinking?
All right. So as I was talking, I know I submitted one to you and I'm going to get there. However,
Okay.
the one I was thinking about, it's an older one, but it relates to this concept of stealing artwork, is I Am Princess X by Sherry Priest.
Okay.
And it is the story where there are these 2 best friends, and before the story starts, one of the girls in the best friends has died in a car crash. It has
Okay.
already happened. So you are getting the grief of this this other of the best friend. And one of the things that they did together was they created this like princess clip art character person. And they made these super cute stickers and they would sell them and oh my God, and whatever. Well, anyway, so the friend passed maybe a year. There was some time before the book starts. And this girl is walking around her town. She lives in a small little town. And all of a sudden she starts seeing her character's sticker
Huh.
on like telephone poles.
Huh.
And she's like, this hasn't been around. Like who has stolen this art? Because it's not me and it was our character.
Huh.
And the whole story is about trying to find the person or people or organization that has done this and taken her art. And so it really is, well, it's fiction, but it is an interesting case of when your art is stolen. And
That
something I
is
love about
very
Sherry Priest, and there's 2 books that I love of hers, but this one in particular has some panels that are graphic novel in them.
Ooh.
And so some of it is novel and some of it is graphic novel.
Okay.
I wouldn't sell it as a graphic novel, but there's just like a couple of panels here and there to kind of advance the story. It
Love
is
that.
excellent. So if you're looking for something kind of related and kids are kind of into it, it's an older one, but I Am Princess X, it goes out all the time here.
I love that. I remember that title coming sort of around the time when it came out, everybody kind of talking it up, and I never got around to it. It's somewhere in my 600 book TBR list. It's in there, but that's actually not my New Year's resolution, but I am trying to whittle through my ridiculous TBR list. It is 596 books right now, but I'm making a dent. So yeah, but that's definitely in there someplace. Okay. Definitely got I Am Princess X. And then there was something else you wanted to bring too, wasn't there?
So I believe I talked about it in my last podcast, but the one I wanted to talk about was Words on Fire by Jennifer Nielsen. And it is on a little bit on the older side as well. But I believe I mentioned her in our last one, that she is just a treasure. She is an awesome human. She's a huge proponent of libraries. If you can get her as an author visit, she is just... she is the author that your kids and your staff will still talk about because mine do.
Love that.
So she has written a lot of historical fiction. She has a lot of primarily girl characters. And this Words on Fire is my favorite one. I feel like you either love her writing or you're just kind of mid about it.
Okay.
But for me, I have fallen in love with her writing, mostly because I have fallen in love with her. She's great. But it is based on a true story, and the main character's name is Audra. It takes place in Lithuania in the late 1800s, and she joins a secret network of book smugglers.
Okay.
Because there are Russian soldiers who are trying to burn everything with the Lithuanian language.
Oh.
And trying to get everybody to read Russian instead. And so she joins this network about trying to smuggle books to people and from people and out of towns and whatever, because she's trying to preserve her language, her culture. She gets caught a couple times. There's some really good, a little bit of, intense action. But it really is about her discovering the power of literature in communities and also her own strength because she is questioned by the authorities. She does have to lie. And it is a really good story about not only book banning and censorship, but also the power of this girl who feels like she's not a whole lot to joining something so much bigger than her.
Wow. That sounds awesome. It's
middle school. She's 12.
Okay. I like that. It's sort of giving me like a little bit of a book thief vibe. Am I sort of okay?
Yep, but for a younger audience.
Okay. I love that. Love that.
Yeah, it's my favorite one. I think we have all of her books, and they go out all the time. I have a couple copies of each one, but Words on Fire is the one I talk about the most because it's about book smuggling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why wouldn't you talk about book smuggling? I love that. Boy, there's so many books now, not so many, but there is a nice selection, I would say, of books that are sort of about this idea of people trying to hide information, censor information, keep books from getting into certain hands that you could do an amazing unit on just those books and those stories. But this one really, I'm definitely going to have to put that. Thank you for adding another thing to my ridiculous list, but I am definitely going to have to get to that because that sounds great.
You're entirely welcome.
Well, thank you so much, because I really greatly appreciate the time. Not only did you talk with us before, you came back to share about this, and we might even be talking some more in the future. I'm hoping, because we've already started to kind of throw a couple of ideas around, so we might be seeing Rachel again soon, I'm hoping.
Well, I'll tell you what, I tried to stay very on topic this time. I tried not to sway at all.
No, you did
best.
Outstanding. I was the one that was trying to drag us off into the woods, but you did
okay.
great.
I have my own opinions about AI too.
Yeah, well, that one we'll save for another day. But Thank you so much. If people want to follow you, if they're not already following you, they should be. So where are they going to go looking for you?
I am on Bluesky. My handle is in the show notes. That's really the place to find me, or I believe my email is in the show notes as well. I'm always up for a Zoom or an email back and forth. I'm super approachable. I love sharing and then, learning from others as well.
Love it. And folks, you do want to take advantage of that, because Rachel is awesome. She's got so much knowledge. She's got so much good stuff going on. Do help yourself by helping yourself to Rachel's time and effort and energy and enthusiasm. Holy smokes. She's the best. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And we'll be talking soon, I'm sure.
Sounds like a plan, Steve. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.